Hi everyone, I'm Miranda and welcome to my YouTube video. Happy Friday. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend ahead of you, and if you're looking for some book inspiration as to what to read next this weekend, then I definitely have plenty of suggestions for you. It's been really fun pulling together this book haul, looking at all of the lovely books that I've got lately, and I've got lots to share with you. Non-fiction books, some new fiction releases, and also some vintage books that I've bought lately to add to my collection. Lots of fantastic titles, so let's dive in. The first books I want to talk about are the non-fiction books today because I'm really excited by these titles. I realised when I was going through my shelves, pulling off books for this book haul, that a lot of the non-fiction books that have come out recently are the ones that are exciting me the most. So let me tell you about these books. The first one is How We Might Live, At Home with Jane and William Morris by Suzanne Fagence Cooper. I love the design of William Morris, all those beautiful floral designs. I've always adored them. I remember visiting Jane and William Morris's house, Kelmscott Manor in Oxfordshire, 3 or 4 years ago now, and just falling in love with every room. It was just such a beautiful house, and for a while now I've wanted to learn a bit more about William Morris, but particularly I'd wanted to learn more about Jane Morris and of course her connection to the pre-Raphaelite painters. And there hasn't been a lot about Jane Morris. I found one biography of her that's now out of print, and I do have her letters, but I've really been wanting a bit more information about her. So I was thrilled when this book just came out, because this really looks at the lives of Jane Morris as well as her husband William Morris. And Suzanne Cooper really sets that out in the introduction, that with this book she really intended to give a voice to Jane Morris and to show how influential she was on William Morris, both in terms of his whole philosophy of life and the way they lived, the way they really believed in beauty as well as functionality, and in being hospitable and having a very open, generous home. They did a lot of entertaining, but also in the ways that she influenced his business as well and how she was involved in that. And then of course her connection to the pre-Raphaelites and being a muse for those artists. So I've already started this and I'm so enjoying it. I love that the authors really put the emphasis not only on Jane Morris, but also in the homes that Jane and William Morris lived in. So she's really looking at each of those houses and how they lived in those houses, how their philosophy of life was influenced by where they lived, how all the domestic details of their daily existence were so important to their lives. All of these topics are so interesting to me personally. So I'm really intrigued to keep reading this, and I'm so enjoying it so far. And then another non-fiction book that's a real whopper, you can see how big it is, but I was so excited to get it, and that's The Life of Crime, Detecting the History of Mysteries and Their Creators by Martin Edwards. Martin Edwards is such an established authority on crime literature. He edits the British Library Crime Classics series, which I really enjoy, and he's written quite a few books about the history of crime and golden age crime, for instance. So this looks like a really definitive volume though, and I can't wait to read it, although it will take me a while. I know my mum is really eager to read this too. We're both such fans of golden age crime and the crime genre generally. So I know this will be a fascinating read, and knowing a bit more about the history of the mystery novel and the lives of some of the most famous mystery writers will be really intriguing. So I was thrilled to get this. Then I was sent this lovely cookbook, Tea at the Palace. The publisher gave this to me. It's by Carolyn Robb, who was the former personal chef to Their Royal Highnesses, the Prince and Princess of Wales. And I love this cookbook because it has loads of recipes for afternoon tea. As you know, I love my tea and cake and I can't wait to try out many of these recipes. I have already tried the lemon and thyme cake from in here, which was so good, and I'll be sharing it on my blog very soon. If the recipe hasn't gone up by the time this video goes up, then it will be on my blog soon after that. And oh, here it is. So it's this recipe, lemon and thyme cake. It was utterly delicious, and the publisher and author very kindly let me share the recipe with you all. So like I said, that will be on the blog soon. But this book has lots of afternoon tea suggestions, lots of really delicious recipes for cakes and just savoury treats as well for afternoon tea. And all of the teas are inspired by the royal palaces all around the UK, which I think is really a fun premise, but I'm very impressed by the recipes so far too. So I can't wait to try more from this book, and I can't wait to share the lemon and thyme cake one with you soon, because I think it'll be a lovely cake to bake in the summertime. And then the publisher also very kindly sent me this book, Rooms of Their Own, Where Great Writers Write, by Alex Johnson, and it's illustrated by James Oses. I hope I'm saying that right. This is such a beautiful book. I'm so enjoying just flicking through this. I'm always fascinated by how writers write and where they write. So a book all about that is so interesting, and the illustrations are fabulous that go alongside. I think they're really gorgeous. Here is Arthur Conan Doyle, for instance. But what I like about this is there are modern writers as well as old classic writers mixed in. So you have Vita Sackville West and Zadie Smith, for instance, and all accompanied by a beautiful illustration, which I think is really special. So I think this is a perfect book for book lovers, or would be a really great gift for any book lover in your life. It's just such an easy to appreciate book. The artwork is really stunning, I think, and then there's lots of fascinating little tidbits of information on writers and where and how they wrote. So one I'm really enjoying. And then I picked up this book, which I thought sounded really interesting, Bees and Their Keepers, From Waggle Dancing to Killer Bees, From Aristotle to Winnie the Pooh, by Lotte Muller. And I'm really enjoying dipping into this one too. What made me decide to buy this book is that it goes month by month through the year. And you know I have a weakness for anything that's at all seasonal, reading inspired. And I'm so glad I picked this up. It's got so much really interesting information all about bees and beekeepers, but I like all of the literary references. I like the sort of personal anecdotes that the author includes in her writing. So it's one that I'm really enjoying, and it's also beautifully illustrated as well. There are photographs as well as illustrations all through the book, and it's a really stunningly designed book. I think it's a real work of art, this one, so I'm enjoying it a lot more. So yes, another non-fiction one that I'm loving. And then I got a couple other cookbooks. The Year of Miracles by Ella Risbridger. This is the sequel to her book Midnight Chicken, which I bought when it first came out and I really enjoyed it. And I was very anxious to read the sequel. Her cookbooks are definitely books that you read as much as cook from. There's a real story behind all of the recipes in the book, and she's an amazing food writer, so I absolutely love to read her cookbooks. And this one I'm really excited about. I'm already enjoying reading my way through it, but I'm also noting a lot of recipes that I want to try. I feel like there are some more sweet recipes in this one than there were in Midnight Chicken, so I'm quite happy about that, because you know I like my baking, definitely have a bit of a sweet tooth, so I'm happy in that there seem to be a few more cakes, at least that's the impression I'm getting in this cookbook, and that makes me happy. There's a raspberry and pistachio frangipan bake in this that I can't wait to try. But yes, it's just such a good read, and a very poignant read too. Ella Risbridger writes about grief after losing a loved one and about having to sort of start over. She writes amazingly about friendship, female friendship particularly too, and it's very moving, a lot of this book. And I really do recommend it, and Midnight Chicken too, obviously. And then I was sent this book by the publisher, which is The Magnificent Book of Vegetables by Alice Hart. It says, eat a rainbow every day with over 80 vegetarian recipes. So the recipes in this book are really meant to encourage you to try lots of different vegetables, and it gives you a lot of inspiration as to how to cook from a wide range of vegetables. Perfect cookbook for the summer when there's just such an abundance of vegetables to get fresh from the garden, which is amazing, or fresh from the local farmer's market. And there are lots that I want to try in here. This cucumber, watermelon, baked feta and olive salad sounds so good. So I really am looking forward to trying a lot of recipes from here and think it will be a great cookbook for the summertime in particular. And then I am really interested in productivity and building good habits. This has always been a topic that I've been personally very interested in. And I try to be a bit discerning about some of the books that I buy around these subjects, and I get a lot of information about this online, but over the years there have been some books I've bought on the subject, and I've heard such good things about this one, Atomic Habits by James Clear, that I thought I had to give it a try. This just came very recently, so I haven't had a chance to crack into it at all yet. But it has sold over 3 million copies. I've heard so many good things about it. Some people have said that it is a bit simplistic, but in general, I think that isn't really surprising. And from what I've seen is that although some of the points are fairly simple, they're still really useful. And it's just good to have some of these ideas really broken down with examples of how you can apply them in real life. And that does seem to be what James Clear really does in this book. Like I said, I'm just quite fascinated by the topic of habits, especially building productive habits and habits that help you to lead a good life. So I'm looking forward to reading this one soon. And then another book I was absolutely thrilled to get. I think this is the last non-fiction one that I'm sharing with you. But that's this one, The Real and the Romantic, English Art Between the World Wars by Frances Spalding. If you've been following me for a while or you follow me on Instagram, then you're probably aware that I'm really interested in the interwar period, and I love a lot of the artwork from that period too. And a lot of the artists that are mentioned in this book, women artists, for instance, like Winifred Knight, Frances Hodgkins and Evelyn Dunbar, but also other artists like Paul Nash, Eric Ravilius and Stanley Spencer. Also interesting to me, and I can't wait to read more about the art and the artists from this time period. This looks like such an interesting book. I'm excited to read such an in-depth analysis of this time period through this particular lens of the art at the time, featuring so many of my favourite artists, and it just looks like there's a lot of amazing artwork shown all through the book too. I'm sure it will also introduce me to some new artists as well. You can see. So I'm really excited. I can't wait to read this one. I know it's going to be so interesting. But let me just reshuffle my pile of books a minute and I'll go on to the fiction and vintage books that I want to share with you. Actually, just before I move on to fiction, I also wanted to share the new Slightly Foxed magazine because I got my summer Slightly Foxed edition and I'm so pleased to have got it. This is one of my favourite literary magazines. It's always so good, and I think this summer edition is particularly good. There's a lovely article about The Wind in the Willows, by Sue Gee, that's right. It's called Voices from the Riverbank. But there's also a great article on Flora Thompson and the books Over to Candleford and Candleford Green, and lots of other great ones too featured in this. So I'm really looking forward to reading this cover to cover properly. It's the perfect thing to have on my bedside table. And my mum is also enjoying sneaking it off me and reading it as well. But we always share our books and our magazines, so that's definitely fun because then we get to talk about them together as well. Anyway, so I was so thrilled to get the new Slightly Foxed. It's always a present from my mum, generally around Christmas time. She renews my Slightly Foxed subscription and I'm always so grateful. And then I was sent a couple of the new British Library crime classic books, which I was so happy about. So they sent me the Edinburgh Mystery and Other Tales of Scottish Crime, edited by Martin Edwards. I was so thrilled to get this. I love books and stories set in Scotland, and I love short stories that are mysteries, so combining those two things really gets me excited, and I can't wait to read this collection. Lots of good mysteries, all set in Scotland. That is definitely my cup of tea, so I can't wait to dive into this one. And then they also sent me one of the new releases, Green for Danger by Christiana Brand. I've heard this one is really good, and I think it's been very rare and hard to find, so I've never read it before, and I'm so glad that the British Library have republished it. It says, it is 1942 and struggling up the hill to the New Kent Military Hospital, Herons Park, Postman Joseph Higgins is soon to deliver 7 letters of acceptance for roles at the infirmary. He has no idea that the sender of one of the letters will be the cause of his demise in just 1 year's time. I can't wait to read more. I'm already intrigued, and like I've said, I've read a lot of good reviews of this mystery in the past. It's just generally been one that people have talked quite a lot about, so I'm really thrilled to finally have my own copy, and I'm going to try and read this very, very soon. Then another fiction book I got, and when I got it, it was actually quite a surprise, sort of a shock to me. I'd pre-ordered this, The Whalebone Theatre by Joanna Quinn, and I was convinced for some reason that it was a YA book. I mean, like completely convinced that that's what it was, and it isn't. When I got it in the post at first, I thought, gosh, that's quite a bit bigger than I was expecting for YA, and then I started reading it and I thought, this isn't YA. It's just not the style of writing that you expect from YA novels. And it does though sound really good. I think I must have just got confused because the story sounds like it's about a group of children and them creating a theatre out of these old whale bones that they find on the beach. It's set in Dorset. But actually the story also, although it goes all through the childhood of this sort of group of friends, I think, it then goes into their adulthood as well. And it's about the start of war and then what happens to their lives during World War II. I'm definitely intrigued because that definitely has the chamomile lawn kind of vibes for me. And I'm just interested to see what this is like. I think I also thought it was YA because so many people were comparing it to I Capture the Castle, which, I mean, I don't really think that's particularly a YA book either, but it generally is categorized as YA, or people often reference it when they talk about other YA books. So it was a surprise in that way that this is an adult book, but I'm very happy that it is too, and I'm looking forward to reading it. This is one I really want to make up my own mind about because I've read some really good reviews. I've also read some where I think some people don't like the ending as much, but they do like the beginning, and I'm just intrigued and I wonder what I'll think about it. So I want to try to get to this one very soon, but it's definitely a time period I enjoy, and I also love that it's set in Dorset because my mum is from Dorset, so that's a big part of the appeal. And then I was really lucky because I was sent the 6 shortlisted titles of the Women's Prize. By the time this video goes live, I think that the winner will be announced, because the winner is being announced on the 15th, which is Wednesday, but I'm recording this video before that. So I don't know the winner at the moment, but by the time this video goes live, the winner will be announced. So that's exciting. I wonder who it will be. But yes, I was lucky to be sent the 6 shortlisted books, which all sound really fascinating, but I thought I would highlight the 3 that I'm particularly interested in reading myself. So that the first one is The Bread the Devil Need by Isa Alan Agostini. I've just heard really good things about this one. It sounds very intriguing, so I'm very curious about that one. Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead, again, is one that I've just heard so much about, a lot of really positive reviews, and it sounds like a really fascinating book. So this is one I'm also interested in reading. It's more at the top of my list to read. And then finally, The Sentence by Louise Erdrich. I'm really interested in reading this one. I think it's actually set in a bookshop. Yeah, it says, a small independent bookstore in Minneapolis is haunted from November 2019 to November 2020 by its most annoying customer, Flora. Flora dies on All Souls Day, but she simply won't leave the store. That's such a good premise for a book. So I'm really intrigued by this one too. I think that sounds like it could be really good. So yes, I'm really looking forward to that one. I'm also excited to get the others. The Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki, The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak, and Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. And I'm really curious as to who the winner will be. All right, so those are the fiction books that I got recently, and then I just have left to tell you about the vintage books that I've added to my collection. So the first one is The Dark Lantern by Viola Bailey. Viola Bailey was a children's writer. I've collected quite a few of her books over the years, but they're not that easy to find, and I was really thrilled to get this one, The Dark Lantern. It's a real summer holiday story, and I'm just really glad to have finally found a copy of it. I love sort of summer holiday, seaside type stories, which this one is, but I think this also involves a mysterious house, which is definitely a trope I enjoy a lot in literature too. So I'm keen to read this one soon. And then I picked up this one, Full Fruit Flavour by Mary Essex. Mary Essex has been republished by the British Library Women Writers. I think she wrote Tea Is So Intoxicating, which is the book that they've republished. And so when I saw another one by her, I thought I just have to give it a try. So I'm really looking forward to reading this one. It sounds like a real sort of village drama type story, and I'm definitely intrigued. And then this one, I was really attracted by the cover, I have to admit, but it also sounds good. It's French Windows by Geraldine Simons, or Simmons. And it says, French Windows is the story of Tabitha Fairchild, who on leaving school goes to spend 6 months with her wealthy Aunt Augusta in Paris. On arrival, however, Tabitha finds an unexpected situation. Her aunt's maid companion of 30 years standing has died of a heart attack. The shock has resulted in a stroke for Aunt Agatha, which has turned her mind, and the household is run by a silent and sinister servant. So I don't really know what this one will be like, but I'm interested to give it a try and see. And then this book I picked up because of my own personal background. It's called Up the Attic Stairs by Violet M. MacDonald, and it's about the author's childhood spent at a boarding school in Switzerland, in the Geneva area. I went to the International School of Geneva. My parents lived in the French-Swiss border when I was very young, and then again when I was a teenager. So I have very fond memories of my time there, and I love to read books that are set in that area. So I'm really interested in reading this memoir. I think it's from the very early 1900s, so I'm intrigued by reading about Geneva at that time too. Okay, so that's all of the books that I'm sharing with you in this book haul. I do hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and extra big thanks to those of you who pressed the super thanks button on my last video. I so appreciate it, as I appreciate everyone who watches my videos. But I hope you all have a wonderful weekend ahead. Take care and see you next week. Goodbye.